do you have like any stories that you want to share?
Okay, that's what I was prepared for.
Okay, good.
So the story I want to tell is my experience coming to this country. I immigrated into this country twice. And mainly having to do with my parents not filling up the right paperwork, and so these things happened. Initially, I lived in the city of Cologne, and I was perfectly happy there. There was my grandparents were reasonably well off, and we lived in the city, and lots of stuff to do, and a backyard to play in, and a dog in the house. And my parents were not there. It was my grandparents. And when I started going to school, they decided that was the time to bring me over, take me to the United States. And I did not want to go. I was happy where I was, and, well, I didn't have a choice. The way we went to the United States is a little unusual, not the way it's done anymore. They bought a car in Germany because it was cheaper, bring it to the United States. Mm-hmm. And Germany was very poor at this time. There was no car in our household. Meat was something we ate on the weekends.
What year was this?
1960s, early 1960s. And some of the neighborhood was still in shambles. They were still, when it was little itty bitty, some of the neighbors were still living in shacks. And it was just rebuilding it. So I was happy, but it was poor for modern standards. And my parents got a job in the United States, and that meant wealth. And so we drove to Rotterdam, which is a Dutch city. When my grandparents left, I just remember just losing it. I just could not control my sobbing. And I felt horribly guilty when my parents finally either gave me an ice cream or a lemonade. They gave me something to snap me out of it. But then there was a second guilt feeling that it got to be dark, and the boats left depending on the tides. So I'm pretty sure that the boat had to leave at 9 because of a high tide. And then seeing all the harbor being fully lit with the cranes and different boats and the tugs and lots of activity, because it's the time when people leave, and slowly leaving that harbor was just an amazing scene. And then, as you left, the seas got a little rougher and the horizon disappeared. It is still etched in my dreams. That guilt feeling number 2, that this was just exciting. This meant big time adventure. And this is the year 1961. And it was early September when we crossed over the ocean. And I just remember that this boat, the waves went over it.
Wow.
And would crash onto the bins there, and then would wash off to the sides. And it was extremely stormy, and that my uncle was in panic mode, trying to figure out the name of the vessel, because in the newspaper, a boat had sunk in that storm. Well, the boat obviously didn't sink. And so my first impressions of the United States were threefold. What I saw there was fog, and in the fog you could see the military vessels. That just reinforced that the U.S. was a country of soldiers and military men. They tended to be bigger, tended to be louder, tended to have bald heads, and I was afraid of them. But they could laugh, and I was very happy that they could laugh. And I was very proud of the captain that he could talk to them and things were going okay. My initial question was, when we get to the United States, is, are there only black people living here? Because I saw the soldiers, and the next group of people I saw were black kids playing around. The other reason was my parents lived in New Orleans, and the only images they showed was what they thought would be interesting for us, and that would be black people. My dad wanted to finish his PhD in Illinois. So Illinois wasn't that different. I didn't know how to speak the language. That was kind of difficult at first. And I remember within a week or so that I actually made friends at school. I couldn't talk to them. They were more accepting to being different because I had the clothes that I brought from Germany, and that was back when there was still a big difference. So I went to school dressed in leather pants, plaid shirt, knee socks, and sandals. High school, again, very different, but I kind of learned to be the different person. Physical education is very tricky. You know, there's bullying going on. Of course, I never knew how to play American sports. Time to vote for teams. I was always the last. Nobody wanted me on their team. There was an even number of boys in that class. 7 of them were black, and 9 of them were white. Instantly. Still in the blacks on that side, the rest on that side. What really amazed me about that was when that happened, it was the only time that a group would accept me. And we would win because they would throw the football to me. They knew I couldn't catch well, so they didn't ask me to run far. They just say, you know, if you just go 10 feet away, you can catch it, yeah? And you do. They're not going to cover you because they think you can't play. And so I was actually accepted in that group more than I was accepted among the white kids. Wow. And I've played on that, and so. But when you come into a country from the outside, you just learn to negotiate. It's like a minefield. What you should do and what you can't do. When are you doing something that insults people? When can you profit from their? I'm going to use the word bigotry.
That was actually the perfect story. We have so much in common. Okay,